I'm presenting you Eliza Camber to do this presentation about, okay, Google, we need to talk.
Well, thank you.
No problem.
I don't think that it works. No?
Okay, we have a problem.
Can you start talking here and then fix?
Yeah, sure.
From this microphone and then we fix.
Microphones don't like me. My name is Eliza Camberogiannis, and yay! I work for a Dutch company named Pixplicity. We're an agency, and we are based in the Netherlands and in New York, in the US. I'm also the lead for the Women Tech Makers in the Netherlands, and before the Netherlands, I was in Greece. And I'm a GDGer for a lot of years, and I travel quite a lot for conferences. And yeah, thank you for being here. I was here before, like last year. I was also at your DevFest, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I think that it's one of the best DevFests that I've ever been. So before starting with the Google Assistant, let's start with what is it. Google Assistant is the virtual assistant that Google created it. It's voice controlled, and it was designed to be personal. It can be put as an extension or an upgrade to the Google Now. First, it was only available for the Google Home and the Pixels, and they announced it on May 2016. And after that, they also integrated it to the Android Wear 2.0. They made more phones being compatible with it, running from Nougat and above, if I'm not mistaken. And a year later, on May 2017, they announced that they will also have it for the iOS as a standalone app. And although it's still not in the Android Auto, there are definitely plans of having it because they already made a demo on the Google I/O for that. And there are also some TVs, Android TVs that are using it. So, okay, got it. It's going to be in a lot of devices. Also, it's available, it's integrated with all the new devices that Google announced on this October, like the earbuds and the Pixel Book. And in every device they announced at their event on this October, the Google Assistant is integrated on them. So it's going to be in as many platforms as possible. Google made it clear so far that the voice interaction control apps are here to stay. So let's start building one, right? That was my first thought. Well, no. The thing is that the users interact way more differently with a voice control app than they will interact with a web or a mobile app. But how different can the interactions be? Well, let's say that we have this example over here. And we have a simple app, and it has 2 buttons. And if I have this phone in front of me, that's perfectly fine. I can tap whatever I want. But what if I want to tell to one of you to actually click that button? I can say to you, like, click on the pink button, or click on the magenta button, or tap on the magenta button, or tap on the button that says 2, or hashtag 2, or number 2. Or that it's at the bottom right corner of the screen. I can say the same thing with so many different ways. And if I'm just talking to you, that's perfectly fine. But what really happens when you're trying to explain this with a million different ways to a machine? So this is where the real problem of designing a conversational app really starts. And having a conversation is really the first thing that we learn to do. When the parents are getting a baby, the first thing that they are actually doing is talk to it. We are incapable of having any conversations, but yet they are talking to us. And thus, we are learning, I will come back to this later on, we are learning some very basic conversation topics that we don't really know that we know about them. Coming over here. And Xerox Alto and Star was the first one, the first PC to actually use the mouse as we know it now. And iPhone was really not the first one to use the touchscreen or whatever, but they definitely marked a new era in how we are using our smartphones. So we ended up with something completely new, a new concept that is called the VUI. So far we knew the GUI, which is the graphic user interface, and now we have to deal with something that is called the VUI for voice user interface. So I told you about some very conversational basics that we all follow and that we don't really realize that we follow them. But what are they? First of all, it's turn-taking. I will ask something, I am waiting for the other person to reply. I want to comment on something that you are saying, then I will just wait for you to finish your sentence, and then I will comment on that. Context. I'll call my friend and I'm saying like, hey, I'm in Istanbul, I'm having fun, and the weather here is just so perfect, but I'm going back in the Netherlands. Do you think that it will be worse? With a very simple sentence like this, or a very simple question, do you think that it will be worse? You can understand that I'm talking about the weather, and I'm actually comparing the weather for the city that I am now, with the city that I am going in a few days. Threading. I'm sitting at my office and my manager comes to me and he says like, oh, about the question that you had yesterday for Jack, yeah, he says that everything is okay. After who knows how many conversations I had, after who knows how many topics I actually exchanged, either with the same or with a different person, I am capable of going back to that thread, picking it up, and continue that conversation. And reading between the lines, if we're talking and you imply something, if it's humorous or if it's a critique, if it's anything, I can just understand this because I am not a machine. All these, we do them in our everyday lives, but yet I don't think that anyone here has actually thought about all this. At least I didn't before I wanted to start. I see a microphone. At least before I start to actually getting in touch with a conversational app. I didn't realize that I knew so many about the conversations that, before starting building one. So since we know all the conversation basics that our agents or our bots or our chatbots or however you want to call them should follow, we can just start creating one. But there are so many steps that you have to go before you actually go through the Dialog Flow app. It's coming, I see it. The funny thing is that whenever they bring it, like after a few slides, I will have to be here to code. So the first step. Okay, never mind. Okay. Well, that's better. So the first step that you have to do is to first write down all of the actions that you want your agent to do. And I will start with an example. Let's say that we want to build an app for an agency that is booking tours. Like in Amsterdam, we have a gazillion of them that are booking tours, canal tours or walking tours or whatever for tourists. I think that this is quite loud, or it's my radio. Okay. So we first need to write down all the actions, and I will just go through all the steps now. It's a lot of text, but bear with me. And then I will just jump into every single action, every single step, so that you can understand what I'm talking better. The second one is that we want to create a diagram, or we can say that it's a decision tree for all the actions. Then we want to decide if our app needs a backend or not. Then we design our UX, and the lack of the UI as we know it right now doesn't really mean that there is not a UX over there. Then we create the backbone of our backend, and we will see that there are a lot of options for that. We create the agent on the Dialog Flow platform, we test, we improve, and we test again. Then we use the webhooks, the backend, and then we test, we improve, and we test again. And the last actually are just a loop. Whenever you actually add something, you have to go through the same loop. So step one, writing down all of our actions, what that really means. So I told you that we will take an example of the tour agency. So what do I want my users to do? I want them to be able to book a tour, to find information about the tour, to find availability about the tour, to find the prices, to find the meeting points. I have to write them all down, because all of these will be my first entry points for where I need to start to build my app, my conversational app. And then we end up with diagrams, and I am the very person of the paper and ink. I love it. So whenever I have to create diagrams, I will just grab my paper, I will just grab my pen, and I will have those diagrams. And there are a lot of them, because you have to take under consideration all the possible flows that the user might go. So first, they may ask about availability, and then they may decide to go to the information, and then back to availability, and then to book the tour, and then maybe to cancel the tour. So you have to take this under consideration before actually diving into the platform. And then we have the backend. And for the backend, there is absolutely no restriction for what you can use. You can use your own backend, and you can have an endpoint there, and it can hit the endpoint and go along with that. Or you can use the cloud functions. And they also, like the new version, it was announced on October, I think, and they also have now an inline editor. So you don't really have to do anything. You just create your cloud console account. And with that account, you can just say that I want to use the cloud functions for Firebase, or Firebase functions for cloud. And you can just say that, okay, just use this. And I will show you how easy it is. So then we have the design of the UX, and it's the most important step, because it's very different to how you can actually keep the interest of your user. Like if you have a mobile app, I'm an Android developer, so I'll go with mobile apps. So if you have a mobile app, you can use like fancy animations, you can use graphics, you can grab your user's attention. But if you don't really have a UI as we know it now, like a graphic UI, you have to find new ways to keep the user interested. So again, I'll just say them all, and I'll go to each of them. So first, we need to pick the right use cases. We need to write them down. We need to create a persona. We write the dialogues. We test it out, and we build and iterate. So pick the right use cases. What does a real right use case is? I will give you examples of bad ones so that you can understand better what a good use case is. So let's say that I built my app and I'm just saying like, oh, what's your frequent flyer number? You don't really want to ask questions that the users cannot reply from the top of the head. Let's say that we want to ship something somewhere. Oh, what is your postcode? I don't know my postcode. I can give you my address. I don't know my postcode. Sure, I'll book the flight. I need your frequent flyer number first. You don't block your users for information that are just not important. To check if this product is compatible with your PC, go to settings and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't need an app to tell me to open my PC. I can do that on my own. You don't really want to ask information that they need to search for it to be able to provide it to you. To verify, tap on the top of your Google Home device. Yeah, what? You need to optimize for speed, simplicity, and for hands-free interactions. If you need to ask something that the users cannot really answer from the top of the head, then the voice interactions, the conversational apps are not the good use case for you. So then we have to write down our use cases. And of course, the more use cases that you have there, the better it is. The more people that are actually included when you create those, the better it is, because my experiences with your experiences are completely different. So what I might have a person in my mind, it will be a completely different person from what you have in your mind. So here, for example, I have Mary. She's a CEO. She doesn't have time for anything. She just wants to get her niece out of her way. And then from the other side, I have a tourist that has all the available time on his hands. So I have completely different things. And from those personas, from those use cases, I can then create the persona for my agent. And this means that my target audience will be mostly adults. So I want to keep it formal. But I want to keep the language very simple because it might be for tourists. So their English might not be perfect. And I want to have it engaging and fun because people are just going to go there for having fun. So you may also have some history lovers or some art nerds or whatever, and you want to keep them interested. And then you create the dialogues, and you have to make a lot of them. And again, as many people as more people are getting involved in creating those dialogues, the better your interaction will be. So you create simple dialogues like this for all the possible flows that you created on the diagrams of the second step. Do you remember? Yeah. So, showtime. Okay, that doesn't work. If I drag it, it doesn't work yet. Okay. Can we mirror it? No? Can we mirror? Yeah, it's good. So this is how, does this work? Yeah. This is how the Dialog Flow platform looks like. And it's a bit, give me a minute. I want to make it a bit smaller because it's not visible completely. Can we make it smaller? No, the minimize goes down. Better. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. So, yeah. I'll start with the first one. It should be here. So here you can see all the actions that you can do with your conversational app, and I'll start from the top and I'll press the gear, and here you have like the description. You can get like the date, the time zone. You can use the Dialog Flow v.2, which is new. I just saw it yesterday, and they added some things. They broke some things as well. So if you want to use Google Actions, for example, you cannot use the v2. You have to go with the first version. And then you can go here. What they added also when they changed the name, so before it was called the Dialog Flow, it used to be the API.ai. And when they changed the name, they changed two things. The first one was the Inline Editor that I mentioned before, and I will show you later on. And the second one that they changed is that you can now support multiple languages without having to build a completely different assistant. And then you have the machine learning settings. You can export and import agents between the platforms. And of course, you can share with someone. It can be either a viewer or a developer. So here are the basics for this one. And then we can go here and we can see that there are two main things that actually create the conversational apps. The first one is the intent and the second one is the entities. And I will start from the entities first. Entities are parameters that you can define, and they are for extracting the parameter values for your conversational apps, for whatever the user is saying. So whatever actionable data you want to get from your users, you have to create an entity. So I will follow the same example that I told you before about the tour agents. And for the tour agent, what are my users' interests? I would go first to the first step that I showed you, that I had to go down and write down all the actions. So the actions that I will use for here is like, what are the available tours, the information about the tours, which can be the user interest. So the user will be interested either to finding more about the tour or to actually finding available the free tickets that he can get. So for that, I create an entity. And here I can also have synonyms, because what I will say as find me the next available tour, you can say like, what is the next free tour, like free seats or whatever. So here we can say, we can have synonyms, and we can train our agent to be a bit smarter and to understand more of what your user is actually saying. And the next entity that I created, because I want to get from my user, is about the tour. Is he interested in a boat tour? Is he interested in a walking tour? Is he interested in a guided tour? So here, I don't really have synonyms. It's completely up to you if you want to use them or not. I really suggest you do though. The entities that you can have are three. There are three types of entities. The first type of entity is the one that I showed you. Like, I create them, and they are called developer entities. The second type of entities are called the system entities. And they are entities that the Dialogflow platform already has there for us. So if I want to ask my user for the dates, for example, I don't really have to create an entity for the dates. There are many entities, system entities that you can use, from location to dates to even given names and colors, and there are just so many of them. And those entities, those parameters that I want to get from my users are then used for intents. And intents are the actions that I want my users to be able to take. So intents, first of all, need to be very, very specific. For every action you want your user to do, there should be one and only intent. So even though I have the user interest, for example, as an entity, for each of that I have created a new intent. So I have an intent for the available tours, and I have another intent for the information tours. And this is how it really likes. So first of all, you give it a name. I will tell you what the context is later on. And then here you can say user expressions. You get the user expressions from the fourth step that you were creating the dialogues. So at the steps that I showed you, I had one that you create the dialogues, and this is where you are getting all of those user says expressions. And then you get here to, so if I click something here, is there an available tour? Okay, I didn't get it. I think that it's because of the internet lines. No, I think that it's because of the internet that it's not working right now. But you can see here that whenever I type something there, it will just find those parameters that I said before. So this is an entity, and this is another entity. And here it just lists them all. And I can see that the yellow one, the available one, is the user interest, while the orange one is the date. And then I can have here, like, what do I want my agent to be able to reply? Let's say this one. And I can try it as well when it saves. If it saves. Whenever it saves. So, okay. I'll just move on. This is the last thing that I will save. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll just move on. This will never save. But for the information tours, I also have the same. And at the intents, there is a checkbox that says fulfillment. And you can check that checkbox over there. And then you can come over here, hopefully. And here, yay! Here you can either have... Okay. So here you can either have a custom webhook with your endpoint, or you can say that I want to have the Inline Editor, and you can enable this. And normally here, when you do have an internet connection, you will see that there is a lot of code already there for you. So how it does look like is that for each response, you get, for its intent, sorry. Okay. For each intent, you can say that this is an action and actually have a name for that action. So here I have the action input information, and I can go back to my fulfillment and I can say, like, whenever this is triggered, then I want you to do this. I want you to respond this. And here I also mark the date as a required. So if there is not a date there, I will get this prompt. So if the user asks me, tell me more information about the boat tour, then I don't know the dates, so I can't give more information about that. So I will come here and I will say, like, for which day are you interested in? And when I do have the date, then I will get these responses. And if I have the fulfillment over here checked, I won't save this, so you won't see it. But whenever you have this fulfillment over here, instead of using these responses, it will use the ones from here. Okay. Hey. So you can see here, like, input welcome, input whatever, and you can just say that for each intent, I want this and this and this to be happening. And also what is really cool is that you can have rich responses, or for each platform, you can say that I want to use a different response. So if I have Google, I'm on Google now, for example, I have also this carousel of cards that are really nice, so I can just create them. But if the user is talking to me through Facebook, to my conversational app through Facebook, then I can't have these cards, but maybe I can just have a more playful tone or something like this. And how you do this is that you go here to the integrations, and it's called a one-click integration. So you can say here that I want this to be available for the Google Assistant. I want this to be available for Slack. And you can customize every single response for Slack or for Google Assistant or for whatever else you want. And one last thing that I want to show you is the small talk and how you repair conversations. So if we are talking face to face and I don't understand something, then I can just grab this conversation and I can try to repair it. I can ask you more information about what you're saying to me. So you come to me and you say, like, the flight is tomorrow. And I say, like, okay, I don't understand. Which flight? So you can have custom responses and try to find out what your user really is trying to tell you. And also you can have, like, the fun part of your assistant to make it a bit more personal. So if the user actually says, like, oh, I'm not feeling very well, then you can have responses for that. And last but not least, the dialog flow has already a lot of pre-built agents over there. So if you want, for example, to create an agent that is using an alarm, you can say that I want to import this, and it will import all the everything that you need for that actions, for the alarm actions. So you really can use this instead of creating your own. And you can, of course, customize this because it just imports it, and you can customize everything. Maybe. Does it show or no? And I really love this. And you should really keep it in mind for whatever app you're making, but especially for conversational apps. A user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it's just not good enough. So thank you so much, and I will take any questions that you have. Yeah. No, the endpoint actually is just one, but you can say like, this is the language, so you will respond this. This is the language, so you will. So you take the language as a parameter, and for each of that, you just say that what the response should be. Over there.
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. Can you tell a little bit more about your company, your role? Like, do you develop any Google Assistant apps? Do you use Kotlin? Things like that.
Sure. So this doesn't really have to do anything with Kotlin or, with actually coding. It's more about Node.js because you need the fulfillments. But my company is an agency, so we build apps for clients. We don't have our own project. And my primary role is to be an Android developer. But I'm a really curious person, and I really believe that conversational apps are the next big thing, because there is nothing more natural for your users or for you to actually talk to something. And I think that it's not at the point yet, because we don't really have the hardware to support all this. But whenever the hardware will be there, and it started, I think, with earbuds, at least that's my opinion, it will take off at some point. And it doesn't really have to do anything. We do use Kotlin at the office, but for our Android apps and our iOS apps.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. Do we have to define all the strings, for example, in the example shows? For example, I say next trip. I'm lazy, I don't want the next available. Will it recognize it, or should I catch this one? For example, next trip.
Yeah, the more that you add there, the better the machine learning will work.
So it will learn.
So yes, it does learn for what your user is saying. So you can also give feedback for the users from what you get for users. So there is a tab that says machine learning. I think that it says machine learning. And there you can see all of the responses that the users gave. So you can actually say that, oh, I forgot to add this, or it didn't find this. So you can just integrate your UI, your UX.
Great. So there is a way to pick the answers that the app is not able to respond. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
And you said, do you have two questions or not? Yeah. You can go.
Yeah, actually, this was the second question. Like, if you don't recognize the answer, will you be able to catch the user answer?
Yes, it
so
will
in order
be.
To
yeah, it will be too late for your users, of course, but it will be just on time for the next user.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. You can consider me as a rookie. So I have a simple question. What is that webhook concept exactly? And could you please extend it?
The webhook, so whatever you saw the platform is just stays on the platform. But if I want, for example, to book a ticket for my tour, then I cannot just do it from here, because I want my users to be able to pay, for example. I want to get more information. I want to have my own backend so that I can check if there is an available tour to make the reservation and everything. So this is why you need the webhooks. It's just an endpoint for your backend. This is what a webhook means.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? No? Yeah, here.
Hi. On mobile, for example, on Android, can we interact with the app, or do we have to use a webhook or Node.js code that you just showed?
Well, the Node.js is really for the backend, so it doesn't really have to do anything with what platform you're going to use. But if I go maybe here, no, did I close it? Sorry, doesn't work. No. Whatever. I'm not a Mac user, so no, I want the one that I already had opened.
There's a minimized one at the right.
Yeah, but I
corner.
can't.
Yeah.
How do you find it? Ah, okay, nice, thank you. So, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Can we interact
Yes.
with the apps on mobile?
So if you go at the integrations over here, you will see that you do have the one-click integrations, and then you have the SDKs. So you can use those SDKs for whatever platform that you want.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome. And there was one question over here, I think. I think that I'm all.
Is there any product that already integrated this?
We don't use it in production.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Maybe.
Not
Hopefully
yet.
in the.
Yeah, maybe.
And for the backend, can we use our own backend?
Yes. Yeah. You can go here at the fulfillment, and instead of having the Inline Editor, you can have this one. And yes, you can just say the URL over here, the endpoint.
Thank you.
And maybe one last one. Do I have time? One last one over here. Yeah. I'm 2 minutes off, but yeah.
If you use it on Android, do you have to use the Google Assistant, or can you fully integrate it in your own app?
For now, I think that you can only use it for the Google Assistant. I didn't check the version if they changed anything there. Yeah. Like, how do I do this? No, maybe later on, but thank you. So thank you everyone, and enjoy the conference.